I lay on the sofa, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, staring out the window at the Chicago autumn sky. It was gray and heavy, as if the clouds themselves knew what was supposed to happen tonight. My name is Valerie Miller, and for a long time now, my body has refused to obey me. Leukemia was eating me from the inside, stealing my strength drop by drop, crumb by crumb. The doctors at Northwestern Memorial spoke with that cautious, evasive tone they use when there's no good news left, but I understood. Time was measured in weeks now, maybe a month, no more. I'm only 37. Not long ago, I was the one cooking dinner, doing the laundry, cleaning our apartment in Lincoln Park, and heading to my job at the accounting firm. Now, even pushing myself up from the sofa required an effort that consumed the last dregs of my energy. Every movement echoed with a dull ache in my bones. Every breath was a chore. But I tried not to let the kids see how bad it was. I forced a smile whenever they entered the room. I'd ask about school, their friends, their soccer practices. I wanted them to remember me alive, not just fading away. Ryan, my oldest, already understood everything. He's 15, and his eyes have become those of an adult far too soon. He stopped asking when I'd get better months ago. Instead, he just stepped up. He'd silently handle the chores, watch over his younger brother, finish his homework at the kitchen table, and try his hardest never to cry in front of me. I watched him change, watched his character harden as he took on responsibilities no teenager should have to carry. Leo, the youngest, is 10. He has a vivid imagination and a wide, gap-toothed smile. He was still trying to pretend everything would be okay. He'd bring home drawings from art class, tell me funny stories about his friends, hug me tight, and whisper that I'd surely be back on my feet by Christmas. I'd stroke his hair and nod, even though I knew it was a lie. "Mom, do you want some tea?" Leo peeked into the room, his face full of hope. "I can make it. Ryan showed me how." "Thanks, sweetie." "Maybe later," I replied softly, my voice barely a whisper. "Go finish your homework. It'll be dark soon." Leo nodded and retreated. I could hear him whispering with his brother in the kitchen. They tried to keep their voices down so I wouldn't hear, but the walls of our apartment weren't that thick. I caught fragments of their conversation. "When is Dad coming home?" "I don't know. Maybe he'll bring the new meds." "I don't think so." Ryan was standing by the window now, leaning against the sill. He was silent, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Had always been a serious, reflective boy, but over the last few months, he seemed to be turning to stone right before my eyes, becoming more and more guarded. I knew why. Lawrence, my husband, had stopped being a husband a long time ago. He appeared at home less and less. He'd turn away whenever I tried to talk to him. In the beginning, he at least pretended to care about my health. He'd ask how I was feeling, offer to call the specialist, buy vitamins. Now, not even that. Lawrence Miller, 42 years old, with an indifferent face and empty eyes, had become a ghost in his own home. He'd come in late, eat in silence, if he ate at all, and go to sleep in the guest room. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all, tossing out a brief "got stuck at the office the next morning" before disappearing again. I felt like he had already left us. He just hadn't slammed the door yet. I knew there was another woman. I felt it in his distance, smelled the unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, saw it in the way he avoided my gaze. But I stayed silent. Not because I feared a scene, I just didn't have the strength. All my strength went into simply breathing, simply living one more day for the boys. That night, Lawrence came home earlier than usual. He entered without a word, threw his North Face jacket over a chair in the hallway, and went straight to the master bedroom. I heard him opening the closet, pulling out a duffel bag, and the rhythmic sound of hangers clinking as he began to pack. Every sound was amplified in the quiet evening. My heart tightened, but I forced myself to get up. Grabbing the back of the sofa, then the wall, I slowly made my way to the bedroom door. My legs were shaking, my head was spinning, but I stood my ground. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice trembled, but I tried to stay calm. Lawrence didn't turn around. He continued folding shirts and jeans with brisk, nervous movements. "What I should have done a long time ago," he muttered without looking at me. "Lawrence, look at me," I pleaded. He turned. There was no guilt in his face, no regret. Only irritation, exhaustion, and a certain sense of relief, as if he had finally decided to do what had been putting off for too long. "I'm leaving, Valerie. I'm moving in with someone else," he said flatly, as if he were reporting a change in a spreadsheet or a move to a different branch office. The words hung in the air. I had known this moment would come, but hearing it out loud was more painful than I ever imagined. Much more. "And what about the kids?" I managed to squeeze the question out, gripping the doorframe so I wouldn't collapse. Lawrence gave a cynical smirk. His face distorted into something that couldn't be called a smile, it was cruel, cold. "Drop them off at an orphanage for all I care. Or call social services. I'm done carrying this weight," he snapped, zipping the bag shut. "You're the one who wanted them so bad. You figure it out." I felt my knees buckle. I gripped the frame with both hands to keep from falling. Everything became a blur. Then, I heard footsteps in the hall. Ryan and Leo were standing a few feet away. They had heard everything. They stood as still as statues. Ryan looked at his father as if seeing him for the first time. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Leo stood beside him, eyes wide with disbelief. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, but he didn't make a sound. He just stood there, watching his father pack his life away. "Lawrence," I whispered, tears finally stinging my eyes. "They are your children. Your own blood." "They were," he cut me off coldly, throwing the strap of the bag over his shoulder. "Now they're your problem. Though judging by the look of you, not for much longer. A month, maybe 2, and the state will deal with it anyway." I gasped. I hadn't expected such naked cruelty. I knew he was selfish, but to say that to a dying wife, the mother of his children. Lawrence headed for the door. Ryan stepped forward, blocking his path. Father and son locked eyes. Lawrence was taller, broader, but Ryan didn't back down. His teenage frame looked fragile next to his father, but there was steel in his gaze. "I will never forgive you for this," Ryan said. His voice wasn't a scream, it wasn't hysterical. It was a cold, absolute sentence. Lawrence laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Sure you will, kid. Move." He shoved his son aside with his shoulder, forcing him back. "I don't care what you think. Live however you want. I'm done. I have a new life now." He walked to the front door, threw it wide open, and turned back one last time. "Goodbye," he said with that same ironic smirk, and stepped out into the hallway. He slammed the door with such force that I winced and closed my eyes. The echo rang through the apartment, followed by a silence so heavy it felt deafening. I couldn't stay on my feet anymore. My legs gave out. Ryan and Leo rushed to me, catching me on both sides, holding me tight. I wrapped my arms around them, gathering every last bit of my strength, and cried quietly so as not to scare them further. But the tears flowed on their own, hot, salty, and endless. "Mom, don't cry," Leo whispered into my shoulder. "Please don't cry. Well, stay together. Well, make it, right, Ryan?" Ryan was silent, but his grip was desperate. I felt his whole body shaking as he fought back his own tears. He wanted to be the strong one, for me, for his brother. "My good boys," I whispered, stroking their hair. "My dear, sweet boys. I love you so much. So much. We sat on the floor of the hallway, the three of us huddled together as the light faded. Somewhere downstairs, the building's main door slammed. Lawrence was gone, leaving us alone with the pain, the fear, and the unknown. He walked toward his new life without a single look back, without a final hug for his sons, without a single word of comfort for his dying wife. The following weeks were a nightmare from which there was no waking up. I barely left my bed. The illness was progressing with terrifying speed. The doctors from the hospice care team came by, shook their heads, and prescribed stronger painkillers. Our neighbor, Mrs. Sarah Thompson, a kind woman in her mid-50s with a soft voice and warm hands, came over every day. She brought casseroles, helped with the cleaning, changed the linens, and talked to me about simple things, trying to distract me from the thought of what was coming. Her husband, Mr. Jim Thompson, a quiet, sensible man with kind eyes, brought groceries and fixed things around the house without being asked. He understood that the boys needed a man's hand in support. Head talked to Ryan, giving him advice on little things, treating him with respect. Ryan listened intently, grateful for the guidance. Ryan took on everything he could. He got up at 6 a.m. every morning to make breakfast for himself and Leo. He'd make sure Leo's backpack was ready for school, then head out to his own classes. After school, he didn't hang out with friends or go to the park, he ran straight home. He'd burst through the door, check on me, see if I needed water or meds. He helped Mrs. Thompson with dinner, did the dishes, and did the laundry. At night, he'd do his homework by the glow of a desk lamp while I drifted in and out of a medicated sleep. Leo tried to be useful, but he was still too young to grasp the full gravity of what was happening. He'd just sit by my bed for hours, holding my hand, telling me about school, about his soccer games, how his teacher praised his essay on the Great Lakes, how he got an A in math. I'd listen and smile, stroking his hand. Those moments were the only light I had left. I was fading. My skin had turned translucent, thin as parchment. I couldn't eat, only taking small sips of water. Every breath was a struggle. The hospice nurses came more often, but there was less and less they could do. Everyone knew. This was the end. One evening, while Ryan and Leo were sitting by my bed doing their homework, I called them over. My voice was so weak it was barely audible. "Boys," I whispered. "Come here." They dropped their notebooks and sat on the edge of the bed, taking my hands. My hands felt cold and weightless in theirs. "Ryan. Leo." I gathered my final strength. "Listen to me carefully. Very carefully." They nodded, fighting back tears. They knew why I was calling them. "I know it will be hard. So hard. But you are strong. You will get through this." I squeezed their hands feebly but firmly. "Promise me. Promise me you will always stay together. That you won't leave each other. That you will take care of one another." "We promise, Mom," Ryan whispered, his voice breaking. "We promise," Leo echoed, the tears finally spilling over. "And one more thing." I looked into their faces, memorizing every feature, the shape of their brows, the color of their eyes. "Don't ever become like your father. Don't ever run away when things get hard. Don't abandon the people who trust you. Don't betray love. Be men, real men. Honest, kind, and brave." "We will, Mom," Ryan said firmly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I swear we will never be like him. I promise." I smiled, a tiny, flickering smile, but a sincere one. "I am so proud of you," I whispered. "So proud. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." 3 days later, I was gone. I passed away quietly in my sleep while Ryan was sitting beside me, reading aloud from my favorite book, a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. He reached the middle of a chapter, looked up, and saw that my chest was no longer moving. He felt my hand, the one he was holding, go cold and lifeless. He knew. He didn't scream. He didn't cry right away. He just sat there, holding my hand in the silence. Then, in a very low voice, he said, "Goodbye, Mom. Rest now." Leo came home from school an hour later and found his brother sitting by the bed. Ryan was motionless, staring at a fixed point. Our mother lay there, peaceful, as if she were just sleeping. "Ryan?" Leo called out, entering the room. Ryan looked up. Leo understood instantly. He didn't want to, but he did. The boy lunged toward the bed, falling to his knees, grabbing my hand. "Mom! Mom, wake up! Please!" He cried, choking on his tears, shaking my hand. Ryan got up, moved behind his brother, and pulled him into a tight embrace. "She's gone, Leo. She isn't suffering anymore. She's not in pain. She's okay now." "No. No." Leo screamed, trying to pull away. "She can't leave us. She can't." "She didn't want to," Ryan said softly, his own tears finally falling. "But she couldn't stay. The illness was too strong." They cried together, huddled in that small room that smelled of antiseptic and the wilting flowers on the windowsill. They cried until they were exhausted. That was how Mrs. Thompson found them, two brothers clinging to each other next to their mother's body. The funeral was modest, almost sparse. Sarah and Jim Thompson handled everything, the paperwork, the arrangements at the funeral home, the service. They didn't let the boys worry about the details. They just did it, quietly and efficiently. A few people came to the cemetery, some neighbors who knew me, a couple of co-workers from the firm, and my sister who had flown in from Seattle. That was it. Lawrence didn't show up. Ryan turned around several times during the service, as if expecting to see his father's car, but he wasn't there. He would never be there. When they lowered the casket into the ground, Ryan stepped to the edge of the grave. He took a handful of Chicago soil, squeezed it in his fist, and said in a low, firm voice, "Forgive us, Mom. We couldn't save you. But we will keep our promise. All of them." He dropped the earth onto the wood. Leo followed, taking a handful of dirt and whispering through his tears, "We love you. We'll always love you." After the funeral, when everyone else had left, the Thompsons took the boys to their place. They lived in the apartment right next door, a slightly larger 3-bedroom. They had no children of their own and had come to treat Ryan and Leo as their own, as gifts from destiny. "Boys, Mrs. Thompson said, sitting them down at the kitchen table and pouring hot cocoa. "Jim and I have talked it over. You're going to live with us. We'll file for formal guardianship. No foster care, no group homes. Do you hear me? None of that. You'll stay right here, in your home, with us. We'll help you." Ryan and Leo looked at each other. Relief mingled with the crushing grief. They could stay. They wouldn't lose their home. But I was gone. "Thank you," Ryan said, his voice husky, gripping the mug with both hands. "Thank you for everything. We won't forget this. Ever." Jim Thompson walked over and placed a large, warm hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You're a strong kid, Ryan. Smart, too. And you, Leo, you've got heart. You're going to make it. We're going to make it together." That night, Ryan lay on the sofa in the room they had been assigned, Jim's old home office, small but cozy, and stared at the ceiling. Leo was asleep on a twin bed nearby, sobbing in his sleep and mumbling. Ryan listened to him and thought. He thought about his father, how he had walked out, leaving them to fate, how he had laughed while slamming the door. How he hadn't even come to say goodbye to the woman who had given him 2 sons and loved him despite everything. In Ryan's chest, something hard and cold began to grow. It wasn't just anger, it wasn't just hate. It was determination. Pure, unbreakable determination. He swore to himself, right then and there, that he would become a man I would be proud of. He would never abandon his brother. He would work, he would study, he would succeed. He would never be Lawrence Miller. Never, under any circumstances. Even if he had to walk through hell to do it. 5 years passed. Chicago welcomed another harsh winter with an icy wind blowing in from Lake Michigan. Ryan had turned 20. He was no longer that fragile teenager who stood in the doorway of his dying mother's bedroom. He was now a broad-shouldered young man with a serious, focused gaze. To provide his younger brother with a decent life, Ryan worked 2 jobs. During the day, he studied business administration at the city college, striving to maintain grants and scholarships, while in the evenings and on weekends, he worked as a mechanic's assistant at Jim Thompson's shop. Jim, who had become a second father to them, taught him everything he knew. "You're a quick study, kid," Jim would say, wiping his hands with a greasy rag. "You'll make a great engineer or manager someday. You have the one thing most people lack, discipline." Ryan would only nod. He knew exactly why he was doing all of this. Leo was now 15, attending Lincoln Park High School and showing an incredible aptitude for math and programming. Ryan had sworn to his mother that Leo would get into a top-tier university, even if he had to work around the clock to make it happen. Their life with the Thompsons was quiet and stable. Sarah Thompson provided the maternal warmth they had lost with Valerie. Their home always smelled of fresh baking, and there were always gifts under the tree at Christmas. But Ryan never forgot the night the doors slammed shut behind their biological father. Over the years, Lawrence Miller had never once reached out. He hadn't sent a single cent for child support, never called on a birthday, and never asked how they were doing. To him, they didn't exist. However, fate has an ironic sense of humor. While Ryan built his life on a foundation of honesty and hard work, Lawrence built his on sand. The new woman for whom he had abandoned his dying wife turned out to have expensive tastes. Striving to maintain her lifestyle, Lawrence got entangled in shady investment schemes. He used his skills as a financial consultant to bypass regulations, believing he was untouchable. One evening, while Ryan was helping Leo with a computer science project, the doorbell rang. A man in a sharp suit stood on the threshold. "Ryan Miller?" he asked, flashing his ID. "I'm with the Illinois Process Servers and Court Services. We need to talk about your father, Lawrence Miller." Ryan felt a chill run through him. "I don't have a father," he said flatly. "That man is nothing to us. Regardless, on paper, you are his closest adult relative. Your father has filed for bankruptcy. His accounts are frozen, and his property has been seized for debts. But that's not the worst of it. He's under investigation for federal securities fraud." Ryan stood motionless. His mother's words echoed in his head. "Don't ever become like him." "Why are you coming to me?" Ryan asked. "He's under house arrest at a budget motel on the outskirts of the city. He needs medical attention. He's had a nervous breakdown and a suspected mini-stroke. The state has appointed a public defender, but he has no one to post bail or even bring him food and clothes. His companion left him as soon as the accounts were flagged." Leo walked up and stood behind his brother. He had heard every word. "He left us when Mom was dying," Leo said quietly. "He told her to dump us in an orphanage. Remember, Ryan?" "I remember," Ryan replied. His voice was as hard as granite. "Tell Mr. Miller that he has no sons. His problem, as he put it, is no longer our concern. Let the state deal with him just as he suggested the state deal with us." The official sighed, nodded, and left. A week later, Ryan drove to the address the official had left anyway. Not out of pity, but out of a need for closure. He found his father in a shabby room at the Sunset Motel. Lawrence looked pathetic. Balding, hands shaking, wearing a stained shirt. Not a trace remained of the once polished, successful financier. "Ryan?" Lawrence tried to sit up in bed, a spark of hope in his eyes. "Son, you came. Listen, this is all a mistake. I was framed. I need money for a real lawyer. You're working, right? You have savings." Ryan looked down at him. He felt no hatred, only a deep, endless disgust. "I came to tell you one thing, Lawrence," Ryan said. 5 years ago, you said you didn't care what happened to us. You told Mom to put us in a home. You laughed when you walked out. I was stressed, I didn't mean it." Lawrence stammered. "No, you meant exactly that. You chose freedom from responsibility. Well, you got it. Now you're free from us. Leo and I survived without you. We became men in spite of you. And now that you're at the bottom, don't you dare call me your son." Ryan placed a bag of groceries and a pack of the cheapest over-the-counter medicine on the table, simply so he wouldn't be the same kind of monster as the man before him. "This is the last bit of help you will ever receive from this family," Ryan added. "Don't look for us again. To us, you died the same night Mom did." He walked out of the room without looking back. Outside, it was snowing. Ryan took a deep breath of the cold Chicago air. He had kept his promise. He had remained a good man, he had protected his brother, and he hadn't let the darkness of his past consume his future. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. If it resonated with you, give it a like, comment on what touched you the most, and be sure to mention where you're from. Subscribe to the channel, there are plenty more stories to come.